Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, I have a very special guest with us. I have Joel Collie, all the way out of Australia. How's it going, Joel?
I'm doing pretty well, Bradford. How about yourself? How you doing over there in the US of A?
It's a beautiful sunny day in Las Vegas. I can't complain. I mean, what part of the country are you in?
So I'm in Melbourne, Australia. So are you familiar with Australia?
Generally, but go ahead and explain for my listeners.
So Melbourne's probably the second largest city that we have here in Australia. It's right down the southern point of Australia. So if you imagine Sydney kind of being in the middle on the east coast, you kind of go down from there. And it's the best city in Australia.
Fantastic. All right. So why don't we get started by me asking you, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, currently I'm a manager with one of the fastest growing influencer management groups called Misfits Management Group. We operate about 35 channels at the moment, YouTube channels, quite notable ones. Call Me Carson, Misfits, Jay Schlatt, Wellen, and Viva La Dirt League, and a number of others. We reach somewhere around 200 million YouTube views on average per month throughout our channels. And we have something like over 37 million subscribers across the network as well.
Wow, that's incredible. I really want to dig into that. Really, before I get started, though, I always kind of go through a couple questions. Let's go do that. And then I really want to dig. So
Sure.
I'm going to ask you the same question I start every interview with. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you, Joel?
Probably give myself about a 7. I wouldn't consider myself any. I'm not much more weird than most other people. To be honest with you, I'd probably give myself that 7. There's 2 extra points because I feel like my propensity to take risk might just be that little bit higher than the average person, maybe.
Okay. Can you what do you mean by take risks? What kind of stuff do you do?
Well, look, I think within the work that I've done, and I suppose we'll talk about this a bit more. I've been working in entertainment since I was about 16 years old. I'm now 32, and if there's something I've kind of seen or experienced rather that's helped me along that journey, working in entertainment has been the ability to, I guess, look at an opportunity or something that might not even be seen as an opportunity and say, okay, well, it's going to be a massive risk, to put myself into this business and onto this path. And I guess I've just looked at that a couple of different times and I've done it, and here I am now.
All right. Speaking of, taking risks, this is your first podcast, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Your first one ever. I really appreciate you coming on then.
No worries. So, look, thanks for having me. It is my first podcast. I mean, ironically, we manage a rather large podcast, Misfits podcast, but there aren't too many occasions for me to jump on them. But thanks for having me, Brad.
Absolutely. All right. So I want your gamer cred. We'll start with the gamer part of Gamerpreneur. So when did you first start playing video games?
First started playing video games when I was a teen, maybe around 13, 14 years old. I remember picking up Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation back in the day. And I don't know why I picked up that game. I think I was just walking through a store with my mom at the time. We were looking at something to buy for the PlayStation I just got. And I don't know, it seemed interesting. Next, you start playing that game for a couple of weeks, and the next thing you know, you've delved into this, highly creative, super, super deep, massive game. And I guess I just got started through RPGs, and love it.
Absolutely. I can imagine if it was like your first real game, seeing that package, nothing special, big guy with a sword, right? And I remember my friends had to browbeat me into playing that game, because it was big here in the States. And I wasn't really into the Final Fantasies and the RPGs, and tried it. And then I'm probably just like you, wow, this game just keeps going.
Yeah, it kind of didn't end. And I think probably part of the thing that I was drawn to about it was, on the store, most other games are just one CD, right? But then you pick up Final Fantasy VII, and at the time it had four CDs in it. And I thought to myself, well, there's got to be something good there. I mean, if they've got enough content to pack 4 CDs worth of stuff, then it's probably worth checking out. as I've gotten older, I've probably moved away from the RPGs a bit more than when I was a kid, and I don't know, Brad. It's hard to find the time for an RPG. You know, once you get out of high school and you have a job and you have all of these commitments and girlfriends and dogs, and you know, it's hard to sit down at an RPG for hours and lose yourself in it. So I'd say, you know, lately I've just been playing a lot of RTS. I love real-time strategy. I love strategy games like Civ 6. I love RTS games like Company of Heroes 2.
Okay.
And of course, you know, I'll get into some competitive FPSs. Like I've been smashing season 4 of Apex Legends at the moment, and I got a pretty good win last night. Actually, I was pretty happy with my performance. But at the moment, it's all about the sort of games that I don't have to dedicate a lot of time to. It's about finding those games where I can jump on and I can play for 30 minutes or an hour, and maybe there's some rounds, so I can jump in and I can play a game, and then that game is over. I can go off and I can do something else. I can look at an email or have a chat with a friend or do whatever it is, do a task of some kind, and then go back to it. Gone are the days where I can just sit down for hours in front of a computer and sink into a storyline.
I absolutely understand. I have a wife and family now. Although I have one question on that, because, you know, Apex I can understand, you know, RTS games I understand, but you said Civ 6, like that thing's like crack. You start that game, it's now 2 a.m. Like, where'd my day go?
Yeah. I guess the benefit of it though is the turn-based aspect of it, right? So although you can sit there and you can go click. All right, one more turn.
Right, just one more. No. Like, I just gotta move this one move.
Just one more turn. Yeah, I'll click there. Oh, it's only 2 until I finish that next building. All right, 2 more clicks. The lucky thing is, you know, that you can just kind of save it and exit and then go back to it. But you're right, like trying to not press that next click is the next thing, right?
All right. So what games are coming out you're looking forward to?
What am I looking forward to? I think Cyberpunk 2077, you know, talking about RPGs, CD Projekt Red have just, I think, really taken that RPG, you know, format and just blown it sky high. I played the most recent Witcher Wild Hunt, and just like with Final Fantasy VII, you know, at the time of playing it, I was kind of blown away with the I guess the level of detail and the amount of content that was provided. Everything was amazing. It just seems like whatever project CD Projekt Red do now is just gold. So I feel like that is probably going to be one of the big next things. But also looking pretty keenly at Riot Games finally putting that S on the end of their title. Project A, their competitive FPS that they have coming out soon. Mm-hmm. And anything that Riot Games does, they do very, very well. And it's encouraging to see them take on, you know, the tactical FPS game. I reckon that they're going to come out with something really, really, really special. So I'm very much looking forward to that too.
Absolutely. And I expect it to blow up very quickly too.
No doubt. You know, the people behind Riot Games understand hype. They obviously took the esport of League of Legends from nothing to the biggest esport in the world. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they clearly know what they're doing in terms of scaling a product. And I have no doubt that the support they're going to have behind Project A is probably going to blow it sky high pretty quick.
Fantastic. All right. So you're an influencer manager. Before we get into that, can you kind of walk us through your professional background? How did you end up where you're at?
Yeah. So I spoke earlier about the fact that I started off in entertainment when I was 16. So I guess I could say that my career path really started there. I was in a band. You know, I was playing guitar and wanted to play a live show, and I wanted to be a cool rock star. But of course, in Canberra, Australia's national capital, it's a small town, and it's the opportunities there, especially within entertainment, are really quite slim. And as a 16-year-old who just wants to play a gig and, you know, be a cool rock star, it's hard to get across the line. So. Mm-hmm. I looked around and I was like, well, okay, well, how am I going to do this? No one was putting on gigs, so I figured I'll do it myself. So I got in contact with the local youth centre who happened to have a stage and a PA there that you could hire for a very small sum. think it was like $50 or something like that. I had to put together the lineup myself. I had to put together the bill. So, and then of course market and sell tickets to the event and make back my $50 and whatever else, pay the bands who were being on the gig as well. I had no idea what I was doing when I jumped into it. I was just a 16-year-old kid, you know, and I thought to myself, well, someone's got to do it, right? So I said yes to the youth center. I asked a number of people who I knew in the music industry, the music scene at that stage, if they knew people with bands who wanted to play. So I found a number of different bands locally who wanted to jump on the bill. I jumped on, was it Microsoft Word? I think I might have made my first tour poster for. Jumped on Microsoft Word and made this poster and just got my friends and people I knew in my school and other schools to put these posters up around different bus transit sections and bus stops and whatnot. And that very first gig, I ended up pulling over 200 kids to the gig.
Hey,
you know,
very
and
nice.
yeah, I was kind of blown away by the fact that many people came. I mean, I was a nobody. I guess some of the bands that I had play had some good fans, and maybe it was the marketing that we did. Maybe just that word of mouth. That word of mouth power was just good enough to pull that many kids to a gig, and that was, $10 a head over 200 kids. So I definitely made that $50 back, and I was able to pay the bands for their time, and I was able to keep a bit of profit for myself. And by the end of that, I thought to myself, well, maybe I don't want to be a rock star. Maybe I don't want to be the guitarist on the stage. I mean, maybe I do, because it's still pretty cool regardless. Everyone wants to be the guitarist on stage, but no one at the moment is putting on the gig. And I got a pretty good response. So maybe this is where I should be. And that kind of started it out.
That's wonderful.
I ended up going from that. I threw a really big house party with a friend of mine that had hundreds of people come to it, absolute hundreds of people come to that. And I thought, okay, well, this is the second event and a lot of people have come to it, so maybe I'm onto a thing here. When high school was over, I started to work at a nightclub in Canberra that was called Bar 32. It was the alternative nightclub in Canberra, right? It was like, playing all of that kind of alt indie rock sort of stuff that was like really cool but not cool. You only kind of knew about that music if you were on that fringe of what was cool, right?
All right.
And that club just took off. We had a night there on a Friday night that was just all about that indie music, and we had a number of DJs that played that, and I was operating and supervising the bar at the time. And we would have just thousands of people come through. It was just huge. I ended up looking after some of the bookings for the venue. So we ended up bringing a couple of DJs down from Sydney. We ended up working with a couple of music festivals, a couple of quote unquote bush doofs in Canberra. And then of course from there, the nightclub scene and the live music scene, I was working on until I was about 21. So it was probably about 3 years worth of the whole nightclub scene. And Bradford, that wasn't for me. I really was.
You didn't want to do the nightclub scene.
What do you mean I didn't want to do the nightclub? Have you seen nightclubs? I mean, sure, as a 19, 20-year-old, yeah, it was mad fun, but maybe it was just a little bit too chaotic, and I didn't really want to be in EDM, right? That's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to do live music, guitars, drums. I wanted that majesty of that stage performance, right? And I kind of got sick of the EDM in the nightclub scene, so I said to myself, well, okay, maybe it's about time you go and get a real job, right? I mean, if you've done this entertainment thing for a couple of years and you've had a good run, the nightclub scene's kind of drowning you a bit. So how about you go out there and you get a real job? So I went and worked at an energy retailer, just a basic call center job, right? Just whatever the first job it was that I could pick up that was going to get me away from EDM and just something normal, right? What normal people do. And so I jumped in there and I got really, really good really quickly at the computer system that we were working on, right? It was this MS-DOS system that helped to work with people's bills, right? You operate it to look at someone's bill and sort out what it was, etc. Got very good at working that system. And I was assisting the Melbourne collections team in operating that computer system, right? I knew a little bit more about that system than they did. And when a problem would get escalated to that Melbourne team from the Canberra office, the Melbourne team would end up calling me and asking me to help them to sort out the problem that was escalated from our office in the first place, right? And so I, looked at the opportunities that were in Melbourne because I thought, well, Canberra is just a small town, right? And I'd been working at this normal job for a little while, and I was starting to get that hunger to get back into entertainment, right?
Sure.
But I thought, well, if I do it in Canberra, I'm probably just going to find myself back in the nightclub scene, right? And that's not what I want. So I took a job working with that Melbourne team that I was assisting, right? So I went down into Melbourne. I was staying in this normal job thing. I was doing the proper job thing. And joined that Melbourne team and worked there, for a couple of years. I ended up doing some pretty interesting jobs. I think just before I left, I was working the revenue protection department, so assisting federal agencies and police agencies in federal investigations, right? Like when the Victorian police would bust a crop house, right? This is a house that some drug dealers would convert to growing marijuana. In order to do that, they would, have to install a lot of electricity in there. There'd be a lot of lamps, a lot of really high powerful lamps, a lot of extractor fans and all of these different things. And in order to not cost them a bunch, right? These people who were converting these grow houses, they would bypass the electricity meter. And of course, bypassing the electricity meter is essentially stealing electricity from the electricity grid because it's not going through the count. So we would assist that investigations team in analyzing how much electricity they may have stolen, helping them, but that sort of thing. So it was pretty cool.
Sure.
But I still wanted to be in entertainment while I was doing this real job, right? This proper job. And although it was pretty cool, it still wasn't what I really wanted to do. I became friends with this girl who worked with me, and she was dating a drummer of this band called Neo Bliviscaris. Neo Bliviscaris is right now one of the biggest metal bands out of Australia, right? They tour Europe constantly. They're all over the USA. They're pretty big stuff. And it just so happened that she was dating the drummer of this band.
All right.
And I thought, oh, okay, cool. Maybe I should come along to a gig. Maybe I should check this out, right? And so I did. And I was like, here we are. I'm back in music, right? This is where I want to be. And so I was always pretty good at photography, right? I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll just go to these gigs and I'll take photos of bands, right? I'll just start taking some photos just for fun because I'm at this gig and I don't want to just walk around and stand around doing nothing. I want to do something, right? Sure. So I went around and I started taking a lot of photos, and through that, I got to know a bunch of people in the Melbourne music scene. And at one stage, around the age, like just at the end of the age of 21, I had a decision I had to make with the real job. So AGL, which is the energy company I was working with at the time, were reforming a lot of the jobs that they had. A lot of jobs were being offshored, teams were being changed, et cetera, and I was offered a redundancy for my role or to stay on, right? So I was confronted with a decision. I was confronted with, do you want to continue on this line of working a real job, right? Being this guy, I was offered a role looking after a small team, doing the job that I was doing. At 21 in the energy industry would have been pretty good money, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not what I wanted. right? I really wanted to, at this point, because I was hanging around all the bands and I was taking photos again, and I was back in that energy that I wanted to be in. I didn't want to be part of that real job stuff. I didn't want to be a part of that corporate agenda, man. Like you can't do that. And so I took the redundancy, and with that money, I started, my first company, Axiom Touring. So Axiom Touring initially, and its first stages, was about assisting bands out of major cities like Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne to taking their tours and finding opportunities in regional centres, right? Places like Canberra, right? So the inspiration for it really was, well, growing up in Canberra, there were no gigs, right? No one was taking gigs to Canberra, so I had to do it myself. So maybe I could, again, kind of go back to what I was doing when I was younger, and I could help some of those bigger bands go from Sydney or Melbourne to places like Canberra or Ballarat or Geelong or whatever these regional towns are, right? So I did that, for a little bit, and I got to know some much larger promoters, some much larger tour promoters, and I ended up linking in with some of the biggest heavy metal and contemporary and alternative music promoters in Australia, right? So for 5 years, we operated production management, logistics management, tour management, all of the production logistical services that a tour requires, right? Booking flights, booking crew, making sure that all of the tech writers and the production writers and everything is set up, operating, venue production, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
We operated that for about 5 years and ended up just touring some of the coolest bands in the world, man. Like we, did a couple of shows with Northlane when Northlane was just coming up. We did a sold out show for Viada's Murder when they first came out with their first gig. We toured Deltron 3030 from over in the States. We just worked with some really, really, really cool bands. And I had a small team that was situated all around Australia. So I had some staff members in Brisbane, some staff in Sydney, some staff in Melbourne, some staff over in Perth, that when a tour would come about, we would all, work together to coordinate, just some really fantastic events. So 5 years, we were operating that. I ended up calling that quits because at the end of that 5 years, there was a tour for a US band called A Skylit Drive, which was, if you remember that whole emo scene, A Skylit Drive was like, A Skylit Drive was like one of those emo bands, right? And it just turned out to just be a bad call, right? It was just a bad tour that just didn't work out. The hype was not there. It was just a bad call, right? It was just a mistake to try to tour that band. It was just bad. And I had a falling out with my investors because of that tour. I had a falling out just with the agency because of that tour. And at the very same time, I broke up with my girlfriend at the time, right? So I was a little bit heartbroken because of a broken relationship, and I was definitely spirit broken because of a tour that didn't work and arguments I had with investors. So I kind of said to myself, well, maybe it's about time to move on from this, right? Maybe I should just stop operating Axiom Touring. And something else I kind of recognized while operating through Axiom was, well, Australia is a small country, right? If I thought that Canberra was a small city, and it was hard to get a gig in Canberra, it was certainly hard to get gigs, and certainly harder to get opportunities in entertainment in Australia, right? Through the Axiom Touring years, I started making friends and business colleagues over in LA, right? Mm-hmm. And I just recognized very quickly that the entertainment scene was so much larger over in the US, and so much smaller in Australia, especially for music, especially for alternative music like heavy metal and alternative hip hop and such. And so I said, well, okay, music's, especially with what I want to do, with the sort of music I want to work with, it's got a ceiling, and it's not much further past what I'm currently doing, right? And in order to do that, I know and I can see the sacrifices I'm going to have to make. I see the trajectory that I'm going to have to take in that space, and I'm just not going to get to where I want to get to if I continue to kind of follow that, right? So I have to do something else. I know at this point, entertainment is absolutely where I want to be. But it's just about where that right fit is for me.
And how'd that lead you to Misfits?
Eventually with the Misfits, yeah. And funnily enough, it's the situation of working with the Misfits and working with influencers is very much like rock and roll. Like, especially in the sense that the Misfits are doing live shows now with the Misfits podcast. It's almost like everything I've learned, all of those mistakes that I had made in production management, logistics and operations and all of those things have now just been transferred to what I'm doing at this stage now. So
okay.
It's been an interesting space.
All right. So what is Misfits Management?
Misfits Management Group is a... Sorry, let me restart that. Misfits Management Group is an influencer and YouTube management company.
Okay.
So we look after and manage the business for a number of different channels. We assist those channels in finding opportunities for them, whether it be finding new content avenues like podcasts, whether it be finding opportunities to create group content. There's those sorts of opportunities that we work on. We also operate a number of like revenue stream building products as well. So we assist in brand management stuff. We assist in sponsorships. We assist in merchandising for those channels, and of course taking the channels that want to grow from their 100,000 or so to try to take them into their millions.
Okay, wonderful. So what exactly does a manager, which is your role, do there?
What do we do?
What's your role specifically?
Yeah. So my role specifically is to work with a number of the different channels that we manage. And I really assist them in finding those day-to-day deals that help them to grow their revenue, right? So you've seen a number of those 60 to 90 second ad spots. We'll assist them in those. We assist in negotiating, licensing deals or IP deals for them. We assist them in, with the Misfits podcast, for instance, in the live show aspect of what they do. It's really, the day-to-day role can be everything from, working on some sort of brand deal to maybe the next day working on a collaboration with another YouTuber, or in some days it might just be, okay, well, what is our strategy for the next 6 to 12 months, and what's that next game that might be the one that we want to work on, and what's that next stream going to look like, and those sorts of things.
Very cool. So in other words, you really have a lot of experience on taking people who are probably already big and then just making them huge.
Yeah, I mean, the operation of the management company at the moment really is that we look at channels that are currently sitting, somewhere above that 100,000 to 500,000 mark in terms of subscribers, and then really helping them to monetize further what they have, and then also grow further what they have, right? So once a creator has kind of hit that subscriber mark, or hit that viewer base, right? If they have those concurrent viewers really, really popping, you know that creator has got their finger on the pulse, right? You know that person understands their entertainment, they understand their audience, and you also know that they've committed themselves enough to the industry and the creative process that they're most likely to kind of take this content opportunity further, right? To be an entertainer in any aspect, music, YouTube, gaming, whatever, there's a lot of commitment that is required. There's a lot of sacrifice that is required in order to get there. And, the people who have really made it are the people who have made those sacrifices and made those commitments. So they're the people that we really want to work with, because in the same vein that they, have to commit, we commit to them in the same way.
Okay, so let me like start, just kind of peppering you with questions that come to mind. What is something you think holds people back from kind of reaching that point where you'd be willing to consider them? Like, so maybe they're, couple, tens of thousands, but they're not quite there yet. What's causing them not to be able to reach that goal?
That's a very subjective situation. It's hard to predict what is going to work and what isn't going to work, right? I guess there are some very, very simple bread and butter things that we could look at. We know, for instance, that consistency of content upload is very important. If someone's sitting at that 10,000, it could be because they're not uploading at a frequent basis, right? The viewer really likes to know that, once a week, twice a week, once a month, whatever the frequency is, right? A fan of that channel wants to know that when they jump on YouTube or whatever the platform is, that they know that at that point, whatever that frequency is, they can see that video from that creator, right?
Okay. Consistency
is definitely a key. It also comes down to, the content that you're creating. Who would have thunk that anyone would have gone from just making that comedy CS:GO video to being 4.5 million viewers within the space of a couple of years. It's extremely difficult to predict. I guess all I can offer the people who are really grinding at it is to I guess experiment with the content that they're creating, right?
Okay.
And it can be anything. Like, is your authentic self really, is that exactly what people want to see, right? Do they really want to see that grassroots authentic person making that content? And try that for a little bit. Does that work for you? Are people really popping? Do they really engage with the content that you're making? If it doesn't, maybe swap to something else. There are a couple of creators out there at the moment, massive creators who have built their brand and their audience around characters, right, that they portray. You look at characters like Dr. Disrespect, right? Guy's huge, massive, two-time champ. Although he is in himself, an authentic guy, the Dr. Disrespect character is, it's a character, and he definitely hit the nail on the head when he started to produce the content within that space. And that's something that people can consider as well, right? Like, is the content that I'm making with this kind of content flow, is that working? Or maybe I could try, creating a character around what it is. Does that work? You could also look at the content that you're making, right? Like the raw stuff. Am I a gaming creator? Am I a mukbang channel? Am I an ASMR channel, right? Am I a travel vlog? These are all things to consider, right? And once you do find yourself within whatever that creative space is, well, how do I make that better, right? And how do I really stand out amongst the crowd? Like, what's that term, Bradford? Like a USP, right?
Yeah,
what's a
proposition? Yeah.
What is that thing that kind of stands out amongst everything else, and really see if you can hone in on that. And if you are sitting around that 10,000 mark, have you considered all of these different things about the content that you're making and who you are on camera and how frequently you upload and all these things?
Okay. So say you have a content creator who hit it. They found something that just has gone gangbusters. It's getting, millions of views, but they don't particularly like doing that one thing. Like, it works when they do it. They really want to do like these other collections of videos. What kind of advice would you give to them?
Yeah, well, I mean, we deal with that, all the time. It's just a nature of the creative process, right? You might not want to be a Fortnite channel forever, right? Like, maybe that's where you found your fame and that's where you found your audience. But you love League of Legends, right? But that your audience loves Fortnite, right? So that's what they do. It's a transitional process that everyone needs to be realistic about. We really do encourage our creators to create whatever it is they want. But the realistic nature of it is, well, sometimes you have to take it a little bit slow, right? So if you do want to move to another game, maybe maybe starting off playing that other game on another platform outside of your YouTube, right? So maybe jumping over to Twitch, right? And maybe you start playing that other game on Twitch, and you start seeing how that audience interacts with that other content on that other platform, right? Is that working out for you? And that's something you really enjoy doing? Then fantastic. Maybe once then you've played a couple of games on Twitch and it's had a good response, maybe you then make a highlights reel of what that is, right? You might not want to immediately move that content to that main channel, that Fortnite channel that you created. Maybe you want to set up a second channel on YouTube, right? So maybe you set up whatever your name is, Bradford Channel 2, right? And on Bradford Channel 2, maybe that's where you start uploading those those League of Legends highlights that you got from your Twitch, right? And you can start to communicate the fact that you have more than one channel to your audience, right? You can say, hey, this channel and all of my audience here, you can check out Bradford Channel 2. I've been playing a bit of League of Legends. Go and check it out over there. That's probably how I'd suggest that people start to move from one to the other.
Okay. I had a question. Let's see.
I do like coffee more than I like tea. Was that the question? I'm definitely a coffee guy.
Oh man, I had a good one too. YouTube content creators.
Just quickly, is this chair too squeaky? Because I keep hearing it.
No, I don't mind.
No, okay.
I totally blanked.
Oh no.
I've lost my mojo.
Oh no. The flow.
I was in flow and then I lost it. So these content creators, I can't even think of a question at the moment. This has not happened to me before.
Do you want me to ask you one? Should I ask you a question? Would that help?
Sure, if you want. Yeah.
What brought you into this space, Bradford? What makes you passionate about gaming and the Gamerpreneur?
Oh, that's fantastic. So it's a little bit of a backstory. I started gaming before I even remember, 2 years old or so. And I would be at babysitters' houses because we lived near San Francisco. We were 2 hours away from San Francisco. And my parents worked there. So they had a 2-hour commute there, 2 hours back, 8 hours during the day. I was basically at babysitters my entire childhood. So I'd be playing Nintendo at their houses, and I just got into it because as a kid, it was a new thing back then. You play video games. And that just continued through my entire childhood because my parents, were never there. They just bought me video game systems to keep me occupied. And then I became a teenager watching myself, and it was still video games because that's all I knew. And that continued through college. I played World of Warcraft. I was guild leader, raid leader, main tank for, the high-end raiding guild. Not the best, but, decent on my server. And then I went to law school. And law school is 300 pages of reading a night, every single night for 3 years straight. I barely had time to play video games, a little bit here and there, but my 10-hour gaming sessions that you mentioned, gone.
Yeah, gone, right?
Right, gone. So I get out of law school and I get a job, a real job, and I'm working for a court, and that's 8-hour days plus, time in the afternoon or evenings when I'm working with the judge. And then, no time to play games. Oh, great, that's not so fun. So I went into private practice. Maybe this will be better. I get some free time there, and didn't happen. I'm so good at my job, they made me partner after 7 months of being at that law practice. I was one of the youngest people ever made partner at a law firm in Ohio and possibly the country. But again, you're working your tail off. So no time for games. And I'm still trying. I have this backlog of games at home. I keep trying to get to. And so I'm okay. And my wife then's hey, let's start our own practice. If you can do these great things where you were. I'm sure, let's do it. So I go into our own practice, and when you start a business, as you know, it's again just a slog. Every day you're grinding, trying to get the people in, trying to the marketing and the work. And so we built this practice over a couple of years. We ended up hiring 3 attorneys, had 3 staff members, a beautiful office, one of the fastest growing firms in Northeast Ohio. But still, you wake up one day and it's just where's my life come? I never really wanted this life for myself. So I kind of left the law. I had been a business coach for a little bit, but then I really kind of went full bore on business coaching, thinking like, this is it. This will give me more free time. It's more money, less work. And that was true, but I got more clients. So when you have more clients, it's more work.
More work, yeah.
So I moved to Las Vegas, got some great stuff going on here, more clients around the United States. And just one day, that moment you wake up again, and I just I can't do this. Like, what is wrong with me? So I talked to my coach, and my coach said, in sum, you need to be working with gamers. It's clear, like, that's your people. If you're not working with gamers, you're just not gonna be happy. So I'm like, okay, let me go find them. So I went, onto streams, and I started looking at like Discord and esports, and I'm like, there's so many gamers here. This is awesome. They know nothing about sales and marketing. It's like horrible. Like they don't know anything. Like, they don't know how to sell a t-shirt. What's going on here? Everybody's broke. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make some clients here. I walk in, and normally I don't ever talk this much on my own podcast. So I thank you.
All good. Okay. Give me a break for a second.
Certainly. So I start talking to some of these gamers, and the first objection I got, and one of the hardest for me to get over, was, Brad, you have a doctoral degree. You have started all these businesses. You've had all these success. You've written books. Like, you have, clients who charge $29,000 for 2-day consulting. Like, you're like, you don't relate to me. I'm like, but no, I'm a gamer. And they're like, what game have you played last? I'm like, shoot.
I haven't had any time. I haven't played any games.
But I am a gamer, because I sneak it in here and there, but not enough apparently.
Yeah.
So that's how I really decided to start the podcast, is because I know they need the advice. I know gamers everywhere need this advice really badly, really desperately, because there's so many of them, and they're just so bad at making money. But there's so much money to be had. It's not hard to make money. And sales is not hard. Marketing is not hard, especially once you know the core principles. And like, you've had the experience of going through this and learning it yourself. And now, like, if you were told, hey, go start a show, you'd be like, got it.
Yep.
But for most people, it's like, it's a foreign language. They have no idea. So I'm inviting guys like you on, trying to get that information out. Just, what is it that they need to know in order to grow themselves? And I've had guests from, small streamers with a couple hundred followers. I've had YouTubers with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and everything in between. Business owners making millions of dollars a year. Business, just guys who are working at like auto shops. So that's why I'm doing this, just to get that information out there, because it's so necessary in order to see this industry develop. Until the gamers themselves on the grassroots level really learn how to generate that income in gaming for themselves, we're not really going to see a real tidal wave movement in the industry.
Yeah, it's the industry itself is really quite exciting too, right? And it's when I talk about the industry, I guess I'm talking about just online video and online entertainment.
Yeah.
Right? In general, like gaming for sure, but YouTube and Twitch, and when we look at those platforms right now, we know that it's not just gaming that's being created on those platforms anymore. What like just chatting on the Twitch channel is huge. Just chatting is constantly up there in the top 3 or 5 channels being watched, and that's not people playing games anymore, right? That's people literally just sitting down and talking, or maybe there's a travel vlog happening, or maybe it's a talk show, right? Raj Patel's Raj Lorette. Mm-hmm. If you've come across that, we had Swagger Souls on there just yesterday, right? That's purely just a talk show, right? It's a play on The Bachelorette, and it's absolutely fantastic, right? It's great content. And I think what we really have here with all of this online entertainment is really an opportunity to craft an entirely, I wouldn't say it's an entirely new industry, because it's absolutely not. Like, entertainment has just been around since, the Greco-Roman period, right? Mm-hmm. It's really about taking that entertainment platform that was, and kind of recreating it now for the new generation in the internet, which is almost like another dimension, man. It's pretty sweet. And I personally am hugely passionate about growing that industry within that space, and whatever I can help to do to kind of boost it is definitely what I'm about. Like, what did I hear the other day? YouTube itself accounts for 37% of all mobile internet traffic worldwide.
I believe it.
37% of all mobile traffic is YouTube. That is just huge. Like
World's second largest search engine, right behind Google.
Enormous. It's absolutely enormous. Like more people watch, more hours are spent watching YouTube than people watch Netflix, right?
Mm-hmm.
It blows me away that some of our creators, don't quote me on this, I'm fairly certain, but we have some of our creators have larger viewerships than the national Australian news. Right?
Like, I believe it though. I believe it. No, that's so funny because I kind of come from this business background, right? Having been a business coach for 5 years, business law attorney for 4 years or so, and I watch a lot of sales and marketing guys, like all the gurus and all the trainers on this, and I went to a nationally recognized speaker, and he was talking about how to get big on YouTube. He's like, I got 12,000 subscribers. I'm huge on YouTube.
Massive.
Right?
Massive. It was funny, if we're sharing that, I had a guy reach out to me on LinkedIn, right? And of course you get all this sort of stuff, and he goes, I'm a social media marketing, mastermind, right? I know it all. This is what I do. I grow channels. I'm huge. I'm massive, and I'll help you to grow it too, Joel, right? I'll help you to do that. And I thought, well, okay, some of our Instagrams, our channel Instagrams have like 4 million followers, right? So if he can beat that, then he'll probably be worth a look. So I jumped over to his page, and he had something like 2,000 followers on his Instagram.
I've got him beat.
And I was like, well, I mean, if here's the thing, right? Like if you're going to say that you are fantastic at what this is, then I mean, you should at least be able to show within that product that you are really good at what you do, right? Like it seems like if you can only get an Instagram page to a couple of thousand, but you want to say that you can get people to huge numbers, then you should probably be able to do that for yourself, or at least that guy on LinkedIn probably should have come back to me and said, well, look, here's a couple of other channels that I've taken. I've gotten them into really big spaces, right? Like, for instance, my socials suck. Right, like you look at you look at my Twitter, right, or my Instagram or whatever, and it's they're not fantastic. But I'm also not about growing my own social channels, right? But at the very least, when we speak to channels that we want to work with, or we speak to brands that we want to work with, we can at least point back to brand deals and channels that we have grown, that we do operate with, and we're able to say, well, here is what we're able to do. And anyone who's kind of looking to work within that sort of space should be able to do the same thing. If you really want to sell that product, you really have to be able to show how you can actually sell that product. All
right, so I want to ask you, how important is ads, paid ads? These guys aren't just doing it all organically, right? Because I think a lot of, especially people starting out, think it has to be organic.
Or organic as in the revenue earned, or do you mean?
No, I mean like actually just hoping and praying people come and watch them, or using Twitter to get the word out, as opposed to using YouTube ads, 4 cents a view.
No, I don't think we've ever purchased an ad to promote a channel.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So how do you do it then? What's the trick?
The internet's an interesting beast, right? There's a culture to it, to the internet, and essentially, or especially within gaming, right? There are memes that exist, there are jokes that exist that unless you're a part of that industry and you're a part of that culture, you're just not going to know it. You're just not going to get it. I think the real key is to really understand the culture that you're a part of, and understanding the culture that you're talking to, right? The channels that really do make it really do have their finger on the pulse when it comes to what that culture and that community is. They understand the jokes. In some cases, they create the jokes. In other cases, they just understand what it is to be that culture, and they are that culture. And I think that's really what that is. Whether or not it's gaming, or if it's travel vlogging, or whatever it is, having that understanding of culture is really, really the key, because that's really what people want to engage with, right?
That's fascinating. So how do they get found? How do they go from like 200,000 to 2 million? Where are those people coming from?
From all over the world, Bradford. Where are they coming from? Look, you could find ways to work with certain YouTubers, right? So if you're a smaller channel, you make friends with a number of other channels. We'll take Twitch as an example, right? Maybe you can start off small. You make friends with a number of other channels, and maybe you start creating Twitch streams with them, right? Like you join up with them. Maybe you create highlighted videos with that crew, right? If you find that some of your social networks that you end up creating, lend themselves to being, I guess, opportunities for growth for you and for them, then it's something that works out. But it's really hard to say, Bradford. Like I've worked in music, I've worked in network television. I now work in YouTube. And I guess internet entertainment. It's really, really, really difficult to say exactly how you're going to do it, but definitely culture and definitely social networks is a good way to kind of push forward.
Okay. How does somebody build a culture other than the memes, other than the jokes? I mean, there's a lot of personality involved.
How do you build a culture? That's a big question. We should take that one to a university somewhere, Bradford. How do you build a culture?
Last time I asked that question, they charged me $12,000. So
getting this for free, buddy. How do you build a culture? I think you have to start small with it, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to be realistic about what it is, right? You have to understand not only the culture that you're creating, but understand the people who make up that culture, right? Okay. It's going to be difficult for you to really make a culture when you are completely alienated from those who create it, right? With you, right? That's not just you and your friends, but it's also the people that engage and watch with it too, right? If those viewers weren't there, there would be no culture. Right.
Of course.
Geez, how do you make it? I can't answer that question, Bradford. I wish I could. I think it's just really about grinding, man. Just finding that thing that works and sticking with it and finding ways to kind of to experiment with it and grow it out. It's hard to say, Bradford. Hard question, dude.
Okay. How would someone go about asking or seeking sponsors, investors, promoters?
Seeking investors. So really, we're talking about sales at this point, right? If you want to find these points for people to invest in who you are and what you do, the bare bones of what you're selling is an audience, right? So that audience is really the value to these brands. They want to know that if they spend, dollar value X on you for whatever that campaign is, that a certain number of people are going to look at that message that you're portraying for them, and that they're going to engage with whatever it is that deliverable that is they're desired to have. And that really is what that monetary value is going to equate to. So when you reach out to these brands or these agencies or whatever they are, you need to be able to say, well, here's me, here's what I do. You need to say, well, here is also my audience. Here are some examples of how they have engaged in the past. And here is where they're located. Here's their age, their gender. If you have the information about what they're interested in, then have an example of that, but then tailor that to whatever brand that is that you're talking to, right? As best you can. Maybe you don't have the data that is absolutely required, but you can do your best to kind of show how that interest from that audience could engage with that brand. And of course, with all of that together, you could send an email. Maybe you reach out on Twitter. Maybe the emails come into you. Maybe you know a guy who knows a guy. Maybe you link up with an agency. Whatever it is, you just need to make sure that you kind of show who you are, who your audience is, and how that is value to the company or partner that you're looking to work with.
Fantastic. All right. Let me ask this. If you could go back in time, if you could go back to when you were, I think you said, 19 or so, when you first started, way back when you were back at doing music still, and you could go and you could talk to little Joel, and you go, little Joel, this is what you got to do to 10x everything you've done for the next 14 years. What would you say?
To that guy, I'd probably a couple of things. I'd probably say to him, don't be so jaded about the music that you want to work with. If we're talking about me specifically, I was very much tied into the fact that I just wanted to work with, these alternative bands or these metal bands, right? I didn't want to do top 40s commercial stuff, right? If I really wanted to 10x what I was doing, I probably would have told younger Joel, hey, don't worry about, the fact that you only want to work with a certain stuff. Like if you want to 10x it, you should probably start working with those bigger bands, right? That bigger music. But I probably wouldn't have listened to myself back then anyway. Even if I did go back in time, I'd probably say, future Joel, you're stupid. I'm not going to do it anyway. I guess another thing that I could kind of tell myself back then is that making tough decisions in business is a realistic nature of what business is, right? You have to be able to confront a tough decision. Like maybe there's a partnership that doesn't work for you, right? And you need to be realistic with yourself about why that doesn't work for you. And you might also need to make a tough decision to break that partnership, right?
Sure.
That was something that I kind of learned later on when I committed myself too much to a couple of different partners, and I felt like one of them didn't really work for me, but I felt like I had to be committed to them, and there was no opportunity for me to really move myself away from it, work with others, and that was a mistake. Sometimes you just have to be realistic that something doesn't work and you have to move on from it. So I probably would have told myself that for sure.
Fantastic. Now, your job you're currently at, say someone out there wants to do exactly what you're doing, Joel. What advice would you give them if they're ground floor, haven't done anything yet?
Ground floor and haven't done anything yet.
Yeah. Pablo Rasa, blank slate.
I would probably say to them, find yourself a couple of smaller channels, right? If you haven't worked within this space ever, totally green, you certainly don't want to be working with someone off the bat who has millions of followers, right? It is unavoidable that you are going to make mistakes, right? You will absolutely make mistakes. And there are things that you're going to have to learn, right? Like if you're working with a bigger channel and you have to walk into a negotiation, with the big brand and it's worth a lot of money and you have no experience, negotiating at all, B, negotiating at that size, and then C, well, what are the things that I need to be concerned about when it comes to a channel of this size with this sort of influence? It's probably not the right space if you're just starting up. I'd probably say that you need to find some smaller channels and really prove to yourself and to them and to others that you can work with these smaller channels and take them and yourself from nothing to something, right? And when you're able to say, well, okay, I've worked with these channels and I've taken them from 100 subscribers to 10,000, 20,000, then you can say, well, I've 10x'd, what they are. And I can absolutely prove that this is the sort of value that I can bring. And then once you've done that, and you've made a couple of small mistakes along the road that haven't had massive dire consequences, and you've said, okay, well, I've learned from that. So I know not to do that again, or I know what the step will be next time I do that. Then you can say from that point, well, okay, I've grown a channel. I've learned from these things that I've done in the past. Now I can start taking on bigger and better things. That is probably something I'd tell someone who just started. I would also suggest those people find a mentor of some kind within the space, because there are situations that someone completely green will come up against. I know I've come up against them all the time, and sometimes I still do, right? You look at a situation and you go, well, I need to make this happen, and I need to make this happen, but there's an issue right in the middle that is stopping both of those things from happening. And how do I deal with what this is, right? If you're able to, what's that quote? To stand upon the shoulders of giants, right? Mm-hmm. To learn from those who have learned before you. If you're able to go to someone who you trust to give you good advice, to say, well, okay, I've got this problem, and it's stopping these two things from happening. Having that person that you can go to may help you in kind of defining how to solve that problem. Absolutely helps.
Beautiful advice. Get a mentor. I say it all the time. Get a mentor.
Yeah, no doubt.
We all have a mentor. I have a coach. Do you have a coach?
I don't have a coach. I have a family friend that I've gone to a couple of times. He works in forex trading software, and to me, the big issues that I've kind of come up against were, big questions like who do I partner with here? How do I get, this dollar value X across the line, and how do I really portray what the value is and what we do when what we're doing is a little bit strange, and knowing a guy who kind of works within that high level trading kind of field has helped me with some advice, especially within that whole sales negotiation side. I've definitely gone to my father a couple of times for advice as well. He's a very intelligent man, and was a pretty, always has given some pretty good advice. So I've gone to him a couple of times, but no coach. If you know a guy, Bradford, maybe you could talk me into finding one.
Absolutely. So we're going to kind of bring this in for a landing here in a second. So I got a couple more questions, if that's all right.
Sure.
So you've told us all about the wonderful things that you've done. You've just had this incredible success throughout your entire life, it sounds like. If possible, can I humble you for a second?
Sure.
And ask you, what's something that you failed at? And can you kind of describe how that happened and what you felt?
Yeah. What did I fail at? So I started a company called the Esports Network, right? And that it just didn't work out, right? It just didn't work out the way that we really wanted it to. My business partner at the time and I had this fantastic idea to create the quote unquote ESPN of esports, right? And the thing that really kills me about this is that there's a guy over in LA right now who's doing the exact same thing. But he's a lot more successful at it than we were. But for us, it was just a bit of a failure. Like we had, we were in deep discussions with one of the biggest telco here in Australia with the platform that we were creating. They supported us with shooting a pilot for this talk show episode that was going to be part of the content, that was going to be part of the network. We were speaking with ITV regarding some content. We were talking with a company, a streaming company out of the Asian region called iFlix. We were talking to them about some stuff. Like we had all of these things in place, and we felt like we had a really good business model and a really good product that was going to get across the line. But when we were in the stages of really picking up that next line of investment, and we were talking to most of the good VC firms and angel investors here in Australia, we just couldn't get it across the line, man. We spoke to tons, 30 different possible investors. And a lot of the times what we were confronted with initially, right, when we said, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do the esports network. It's like the ESPN of esports. We're going to have all this content. Yeah. The first question back to us was, oh, what's esports?
Right.
And I was like, okay. So we quickly found that through that finding that investment process, that really all we were doing was educating, all of these companies and all of these investors and TV networks even in what esports was. I felt like by the end of it, we probably should have been charging consultancy fees.
Right. I was going to say.
Instead of trying to find investment, right? And I was like, geez, like maybe within this space, we just had the model wrong. Maybe we should just be consultants, right? Because that's all we're doing and they're just getting it all for free. we ran out of our runway, right? We just ran out of it. We had, some on-screen talent that were about to, shoot, this program that was going to be a part of the network. And we were talking to, other content providers about their IP. We were having a chat with ES Force about, a content crew and events company out of Russia about their stuff. And we just couldn't do it. We just couldn't do it, man. So I ended up just kind of sitting it by the wayside. My business partner left, and I took over his share of the company, and then I just kind of did some small consultancy sort of work in amongst, having another job. But yeah, it just didn't work out. And I think what I learned from that was a couple of things, right? Timing is key, right? Like when you're really putting forward these business ideas. I mean, you could have come up with the most amazing idea 30 years ago, but if the industry is not ready for it, and the people with the money to invest in it are just not willing to risk their investment on what that is, then it's a slim chance that you're going to get it across the line. I mean, sure, there are opportunities to crowdsource stuff now, right? And you could potentially get it across that way, but timing is very, very, very key. The other thing I learned is that the VC culture here in Australia is very, very, very risk averse, right? From what I understand, when a company who is a startup out of Australia, right? Let's say they've gone 1 or 2 rounds out of Australia. Let's say they go over, to the US to kind of take that next big step. I'm led to believe that once they do go over there, that the VCs and investors over in America are quite happy to look into that investment, because they know that the due diligence in Australia has been so key, like they have just done it over and over and over again. So, and that I guess just speaks to the fact that we have a smaller economy compared to the US, and entertainment in general, from what I've experienced, is just so much smaller. So to get something across the line here was just a lot harder. The gentleman and his team who are doing the esports network over in the US right now, just from what I understand, doing gangbusters, and they've got a really, really good team behind them, and have clearly found the investment they're looking for. So well done to them.
Just proof that you can't win them all, right, Joel?
Can't win them all, man. And that's just the nature of it. Like if you're not able to take a loss, right, or take a hit, and you're not able to bounce back from it, then it's just going to hurt you. But
sounds like you've bounced back spectacularly. So good for you.
Done all right, man. I'm pretty proud and pretty excited about the team that I work with, man. The talent that are a part of the Misfits Management Group are just some of the most creative and just the best people I think I've ever worked with, just in terms of like culture of a team, right? If we're just going to take all of the managers and directors and such into account, like the culture within this business is just second to none. It's a fantastic place to work. I love the people that I work with, and I especially love the channels that we work with too, and very proud of what they do.
That is so great. Okay, so Joel, how do people find you? I know you said your social media isn't the best, but like, what if people want to get in touch with you? How do they get in touch with you?
Look, so I'm on Twitter. So you can find me on Twitter at Joel Axiom. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Joel Collie. You can reach out to me there. I'd be happy to have a chat.
Wonderful. All right. So kind of last question. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or anything I didn't ask you think we need to cover still?
I think we've covered everything a fair bit. I will do a shout out. Misfits podcast live show. Some tickets still available. February 28th in Boston, and March 8th in LA. The Boston tickets are really, really, really close to sold out, and the LA tickets are going pretty quick too. But if anyone's keen to
burst your bubble here, Joel, but this won't come out before that.
Dude.
I know.
Okay, never mind then. In that case, nothing. Forget my plug.
This is being recorded almost 3 weeks in advance.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
All right. Well, Joel Collie, thank you so much for coming on with us. Hopefully we didn't rough you up too much in your first podcast.
No, it was great. You were fantastic, Bradford, and honestly, thanks for giving me the opportunity. It's been cool.
Anytime. All right, yep. Gamerpreneurs, please go back and listen to this. He has a breadth of knowledge. He really, really tells you a lot of stuff, even though he wasn't very pointed necessarily with his points. Nothing to say against you, Joel. No, like it was wonderful advice. It was just told in story form, and that's usually the best way people can understand it. So please go back and re-listen to this if you have to. All right, on that note, I'm going to tell you all, take it easy. Hey, if you like this podcast, I'd love to invite you to check out a little bit more about me, Dr. Bradford Carlton, Gamerpreneur. If you go to my website, www.thegamerpreneur.com/bonus, I'm going to give you a free copy of my book, The Warcraft of Business, where I explain my history in both gaming and business and how I brought the two together in order to create some very successful companies and help a lot of people. And all you got to do is pay for shipping and processing, and I'll send you this book. I absolutely know you're going to love it. All right, you all take it easy.